Hi, Kevin. Thank you so much for joining us on the Next in Line podcast. We're super happy to have you on as a guest today. Before we get started, though, I wanted to have you introduce yourself to the audience, tell us a little bit about your background, and how your career journey kind of shaped up throughout the years.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you, Karina, for having me on. This is like one of my favorite subject matters. As you know, when you reached out and asked to participate, of course, I was all in. So I'm thrilled that you're having me, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun on this episode. But I went to, grew up in Atlanta, born and raised in Atlanta, went to school at Lee University in Tennessee, and then I did a study abroad program at Cambridge University, which really kind of shaped my view of the world, or reshaped it, I should say. And in doing so, it really kind of pivoted me into the world of advertising, which I'll get into a little bit later. But since then, I've gone on to work for some of the world's largest advertising firms. I started at Foot Cone Belding in FCB in New York City on the Citibank account. And I worked at Low End Partners, Low Lintos, Ogilvy, Publicis, pretty much any WP company you can swing a cat at. But then I made the switch over to the dark side with UPS, and I've worked with Coke and Orange Theory and edible brands. So I've kind of had a 40-60 split, agency client side. But through this process, I've really found what I love about the business. And I think you and I, we were prepping for this, Karina, we talked about how it's such an exciting time to be in this field. Things are a little different, things are changing, but there's a lot of opportunity. So I'm a glasses overflowing kind of guy. I see opportunity everywhere. So when people tell me the job market's terrible or I can't see any traction, I'm like, well, what are you doing? Let's talk about it.
Absolutely.
So hopefully we can help with that today.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing your incredible background. I do want to touch upon that a little bit. So I know you just mentioned you work for a lot of recognizable brands like Coke, Orange Theory, Edible, and all the many others you just mentioned. But throughout those and those experiences, maybe what's one lesson you can kind of tell our audience that's, that you learned throughout your time at each place that maybe they may not know yet?
Sure. I mean, I think each company is really a collection of people. Companies are more than just a logo and color schemes and products. It's people who run them. And I think people and dynamics are everything. And I've learned to be adaptable. I think every company has its own unique collection of people, has its own unique collection of experiences you might have and processes and the culture, all of which are wonderful. And I think, and I'm still learning to continue to adapt because I don't want to go in there and be a bull in a china shop, nor do I want to go in there and be a quiet little mouse. Always trying to find the right balance. But at the same time, I know my role is to help disrupt. And that can ruffle feathers.
Yep.
But they wouldn't reach out to me and hire me if they didn't need to have some disruption. So to me, it's always just learning to be adaptable and also to learn how to be really to be agreeable to people, not always saying yes, but just having a good way about your style and your demeanor, because I think the more you can build trust and collaboration and a coalition, not around my idea, but around our idea, I think you can do anything.
Absolutely. I feel like one, team collaboration is the biggest thing when it comes to marketing, and building that trust and authenticity, like you just mentioned, is at the core of it. So
that's right. And Karina, what's missing with most companies and brands today is everyone talks about, particularly HR, where they do surveys and performance reviews about how collaborative are they. To me, you need to have somebody to collaborate around. And so many companies and brands are wandering around, particularly in marketing, trying to figure out, okay, we've got these initiatives, but like, really, what are you collaborating around?
Yeah.
So to me, I love to be able to establish a really tight, sharp strategy so everyone knows where we're going, so we can know what we're collaborating around, and we have very clear deliverables to get to our goal. So that's my passion point.
I love it. I love to hear it. I mean, you seem super passionate about this, and about the lessons that you've learned and all these things that kind of shaped who you are today. Did you face any challenges along the way?
Oh gosh, Karina, so many. And I think you and I talked about how you get on these podcasts. I've listened to so many because I find them helpful. But people in my position always talk about all their great wins, successes, how they did it. I find more teachable moments in the times I've failed, or where maybe I failed somebody. I'll tell you a quick story. it's kind of embarrassing, but I still find it funny, and I'm happy that my company felt it was funny later. But we were working with Apple, and when I was at Orange Theory, and I was their chief brand officer. I was with them for about 5.5 years, and we were doing a collaboration with our technology, the wearable technology. If you've been at Orange Theory Studio, you can track your heart rate.
Yes.
Well, we did a lot of research, and a lot of our members wanted to use their Apple Watch instead of the wearable that we sold. And we listened. So we collaborated with Apple and developed a little device to put onto your Apple Watch to use it in the studio. Different technologies that help streamline the technology differences you actually use it. I was so excited about this, and I couldn't wait to tell the world. And I was at a conference in San Diego speaking about something completely different. And I happened to mention backstage to a reporter, she was asking, she was a fitness reporter and wanted to know, hey, what's the next big thing coming? I said, I can't tell you, but we're doing a collaboration with a brand that rhymes with Snapple. So Karina, I went to go see my son. At the time, he was in school in Utah. And so I went from San Diego to Utah, and there's no Wi-Fi in the plane. When I landed, my phone blew up.
Oh,
there was a
no.
story from the reporter saying Orange Theory collaborates with Apple with a new Apple Watch solution. So it was Apple, being Apple, famously secretive, did not appreciate that. My
Yeah.
CEO and president, they're like, oh my God, Kevin, what happened? I said, I don't know. I just got excited. So that was a big PR whoopsie because I talked to the lady. I said, well, this is off the record, right? There is no off the record. Of course there isn't.
None.
So
None at all.
that was my biggest learning was, I get so excited about things, and I just had to learn to really keep a secret and contain my excitement.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Snapple thing for sure gave it away, but
Well, by the way, when I left, they threw a big party when I left Orange Theory, and the Apple folks and the Orange Theory executive team and my team gave me a big case of Snapple when I left, which I thought was really funny.
I love how, like, in the moment you probably felt, oh gosh, like this is a big uh-oh moment, but they
That's terrifying.
ended up becoming a funny moment, right, to look back on.
It was. Well, I think the lesson there was just own your mistakes.
Yeah.
There's no excuse. It just was what it was. It's exactly what I told you. And I told Apple that, and I told my executive team that. And they're like, well, at least we have somebody who cares.
Yeah. You're very passionate about it.
Yeah, but just don't do it again.
Well, I'm sure you definitely learned from that. And I think that's a very, very cool story to share. I mean, that's crazy that you mentioned that because I remember I used to go to Orange Theory and
Right.
I remember wearing that band around your chest or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chest strap.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
So I totally remember that. That's crazy that you were a part of that.
Yeah, and it was a big improvement on that chest strap.
Yeah.
It was a lot easier to wear, and more comfortable.
Yeah,
So, especially for women. So it was a really
exactly.
big advancement for the brand and for both brands, Apple and Orange Theory, particularly because Apple really is trying to get more in the health space, with their wearable technology, and
Yeah.
perfectly with us. So it was exciting.
Yeah, that's super exciting. So another thing you mentioned during our prep in relation to everything that we're talking about right now with Orange Theory, you mentioned building brands, and that's exactly what you like to do. And that's similar to what you did at Orange Theory, correct? Um,
We had very few studios relative to what we have today. We were only in like 6 countries, 5.
yeah.
A few hundred studios. And when I left, we had 1,500 studios. So, so it was really a blank slate brand. There was already a little mini cult following, and there was a lot of buzz around it. And Orange Theory, before I came, was very good at local marketing.
Yeah.
We used to paint bikes orange and tie them to light posts and chain them. And people would wonder, like, hey, what's that orange bike? And then, of course, HOAs and whatnot got irritated with that. But it was really incredible to be able to build, a brand and establish its DNA from the early days. And that was probably my most thrilling experience from a brand creation standpoint.
No, absolutely. I'm sure. Another thing I wanted to touch upon is then you transitioned over into edible arrangements. And being that you go into these brands, like let's say you're starting fresh and, implementing a strategy in that side, what is the first building block that you kind of go towards when entering brands like this?
Absolutely. I go right to the founder or who created it. I did that with edible arrangements and spoke with Tariq Farid, who famously and created this inventive product 25 years ago. But kind of finding his why, the Simon Sinek, find your why. But like, why did you do this? Like, what was so? I know it was unique at the time, but really, what were you in it for?
Yeah.
Same thing with Orange Theory. I sat down with for about an hour and a half, 2 hours with Ellen Latham. She created the workout. And we talked about like, what is it really you're passionate about? What do you think this brand can do and should do? And she had a conversation, her and I had for about how it's not about fitness really. It's really about your mental state and community and all these benefits you have from connecting with one another and also having a really science-backed workout for your health and your health span, not just your looks. And so we created this. I said, well, this is really about giving people a better life and a longer life and maybe more life. And she said, that's it. And so we created a platform around more life for Orange Theory, really to exemplify the idea that, Orange Theory is more than just a workout. It really is a place where you can find, a better, stronger life, healthier, meet connections and communities. So I always like to talk to the founders, and then critically at the same time, let's see what people are saying, like customers or ex-customers, and see, that's why NPS is always one of my favorite metrics. It's like to really tap into like what people really think about your brand. And if it's great, let's continue and build on that. And if there's a problem, let's really dig in there and try and fix it, because no marketing in the world can change that if we just stay the course doing what we're doing, which is not working. So that's really kind of my starting point. And then I help kind of sherpa the process along to really zero in and really make it have a pointy tip to it, like really sharp strategy. So just listening is mostly what I like to do.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love it. I feel like it's super important to a lot of people just kind of steer towards one direction, but you kind of look at it from a holistic standpoint, like
very holistic,
looking at, going to the community directly, going to the founder, even talking to employees too, like that have been there past, maybe you can collect data, like that is the foundation to really transform these brands like you have. So that is super cool.
Yeah, for every franchise brand I've ever worked on, every single one of them, I've always gone and talked to franchisees before I joined the company.
Yeah.
Just try and understand, sometimes they'll be negative, but I'm like, no, I want to talk about the customer. Let's talk about the customer and what's going on here. So if it's a unit type brand, they have lots of locations, it's great to talk to, the store managers, you get a lot of insight there too.
No, yeah, that's super, super good. And I absolutely love that. Another thing you mentioned about Orange Theory just now was that it builds a sense of community. And I'm sure you had to, tie in an emotional connection to implementing this strategy. What's one thing you would say young marketers now can avoid getting lost with when trying to make that emotional connection with brands?
Oh, wow. I mean, I think this is so important. Look, 95% of the brain is emotional. It's not reason, it's not rational. We make very quick emotional decisions. And I did there's a lot of neuroscience. I remember I took this class in college. I can't believe something in college actually really stuck with me, but it did. The neuroscience was really about how we make these, and they're all linked to these little emotional moments in life. And that's why nostalgia is so big right now, Karina, because a lot of the young generation love like the feeling you get from that. So, because it's connected to a simpler time, even though I kind of laugh because when I was growing up, the 50s were a simpler time, but whatever. But emotional connection, it's 95% of the brain. So if you're not feeling something from a brand, you're missing something. And there's so much data, KPI, all these things we have, and they're all really important. But before all that, way upstream is like, are we creating a brand that people care about? One of my favorite books is an older book. It was by Kevin Roberts. He was then the CEO of Saatchi Worldwide. Brilliant man. He wrote a book called Love Marks. Oh. And I highly recommend that book. Sometimes some of the best books have been written 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's durable. It stood the test of time, but it really makes a scientific and a more kind of artistic case for brands that are most financially successful. The Fortune 500 brands, S&P, the most highly performative brands have the highest emotional connection to them. And really why and how you go about creating that connection with people. So you'll notice I don't really say consumers that often. Yeah. I try and avoid it at all costs because to me, consumers don't feel. There's a time when countries, including this country in the United States, we called each other citizens. We didn't call each other consumers. So I'm a throwback. I like to really keep it real. Like, let's keep it around the human connection. So to me, if you're not feeling something about a brand, then that's when you're starting to get into the doom loop.
I completely agree. And I like that approach. I mean, people now, everyone at the end of the day, they're just people getting attracted to brands and products and services. So it's all about that human element. I mean, even with the technology now, it's still the human element.
Absolutely. And even as you're discovering things and learning um, about what people believe about you and think, I've gotten very emotional about people's stories about their
Yeah.
love for a brand. Obviously, we've talked a lot about Orange here already, but that's a deeply loved brand by people who feel fiercely about it. And hearing stories from people who had all sorts of, chronic diseases and other things that could be addressed through a good fitness regimen, really gotten off medications, psychological, medications and whatnot. It really motivates you. And so I'm always looking for that for new brands.
I love it. And I feel like that is such a rewarding experience when you're able to really touch someone's life like that. And a lot of people
Oh,
don't
yeah.
tend to see that when it comes to marketing. Like the smallest things could make a huge difference in someone's life.
And the biggest win is when the employees get so
Yeah.
excited about it. If I
Yeah.
can't get the employees and the owners excited about it, how do you think I can get the consumer, so to speak, the people out there? Because people can tell if you love the brand or not, if
Yeah,
you're serving them or whatever the product might be or the experience. So important.
I love that. And one thing you mentioned, and I'm going to kind of switch gears here a little bit, was in our prep session about curiosity a lot. And
Hmm.
kind of like how that real world discovery came about. And why do you think curiosity is such an underrated skill for marketers today? Or is it?
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't know.
look, we've got so much data now. We're just like awash in data, and there's KPIs, there's AOV, CAC, OKRs, ROI, EBITDA, all these things. But those are downstream effects of upstream activities and
Yeah.
strategies. So to me, curiosity really helps inform new ways to invigorate a brand that might need reinvigoration, or curiosity can enhance and continue because look, content and experience of the brand are like never ending need to keep feeding the beast today,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So you've got to always have a new angle on a fresh angle on what you can do to your brand or some cool experiences or a new product idea or an innovation. All those come from experiences and being curious. So to me, I always look to Asia. That's always my favorite. I read a lot of content and publications and all sorts of things, in pop culture from Asia because they're always a little ahead of us.
Yeah,
Um,
they are.
I knew that was coming 2 years ago, and so it used to be Los Angeles was the trendsetter. No longer. It really is Asia, and other parts of the world, and really it's been democratized through social media. But to me, that curiosity, I feel like people get so stuck in a rut when they work on a brand where they lose sight of like being inspired and I'm not talking about going just to brand conferences or marketing tech. I'm talking about getting back to the art galleries, going to exhibitions, having an interest, it's a personal interest, whether it's a reading or book club. But to me, it's just so important to be curious.
Yeah, and I think what we talked about these past few days, honestly, was about like you never know where an idea can spark from. Like you could be in an art
Really,
gallery and not scrolling on your phone or what they call like doom scrolling now, right?
yeah.
Where it'll spark that interest and it could lead into something much bigger than what you may think. It's great.
100%. I mean, it truly is. I know when I worked on the agency side, I know a lot of creatives used to roll their eyes and said, an idea can come from anywhere. People would say, an idea can come from anywhere. They're like, yeah, the secretary. I'm like, but I'm like, we have the last laugh because they really do. I have so many stories of ideas that came from the most unusual places.
That's awesome. Do you have a story that you wouldn't mind sharing today with us?
Well, gosh, some of my best ideas I actually come up with myself.
Oh,
But the
amazing.
reason why I come up with them is because I've talked to so many people we talked about earlier in this podcast.
Yeah.
And they usually occur in the middle of the night. And like with edible, I know there's a real challenge with the name edible. It's a generic name,
Yes.
but it's actually a brand name.
Yeah.
They were more than arrangements. but yet people know us as the arrangements. So the idea is really, how do I find a way to transition Edible from being known as just the arrangement brand to being the gifting brand?
Yeah.
And so we turn the idea of arrangements into a verb. So Edible arranges joy, Edible arranges surprises, and really just this idea of all the things we do for people every day to put a smile on their face. And a lot of that came from franchisees, to be honest, and the
Cool.
stories they told. And even the founder, Tariq Farid, has some really touching stories about what just a little act from Edible did for somebody to really lift their day or week, their month, but it's just that's why curiosity and always listening is so important. I can be a big mouth sometimes, but you'd be surprised. Sometimes I can be really quiet. I just want to listen and take in.
Yeah, I feel like when you listen and then kind of do your own process and then come up with the idea by yourself, it could be one of the best ones yet. You never know.
I mean, we talk about storytelling and marketing, but
Yes.
really listening to just any stories from just real people is like the greatest source of inspiration for me.
I love that. And I feel like honestly nowadays, a lot of people don't know that the act of listening is super important as a marketer.
Oh, totally. And honestly, Karina, I'm still working on that skill today.
Me too.
Um, my wife, she got onto me a couple years ago. She's like, every time we're at dinner, I start to tell a story and then you take over. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I didn't even realize I did that. I get so excited.
Yeah.
So I've been using that at work. I'm like, okay, maybe I do that at work too. And some people who are listening to this podcast who know me are like, you totally do that sometimes, Kevin. But it's something I think is really important, is to be an active listener.
I love that. That's super important. I totally agree with you. And one thing is, I want to mention, you also are a professor, correct? You teach and
I'm not a professor. I'm a guest lecturer.
a guest lecturer.
I don't
Okay.
have the doctorate degrees required to be a professor, but I come in particularly in marketing courses that want real world experience.
Hmm.
So I guest lecture at Emory University here in Atlanta. This is my second year. I've been asked to come back, and it's a marketing practicum class. It's a business simulator, a marketing simulator. So I gave them a brief last year, and the whole semester I worked with the professor of the class to work with. It's a class of 90 students, 4 teams, and each of them had to present a way to reinvent edible arrangements. Like, what would they do as as a generation Gen Z? What was their perspective? And they all came up with incredibly innovative, creative, and very tightly put together ideas. So to me, I love teaching and that's why I'm on this podcast. I think it's so important to pay it forward, as we said.
Yeah.
It's really important because if we don't have a new generation of people who care about, who are great marketers, it's really important to have that stable of people, and also give people an avenue they maybe hadn't thought about as a career. So teaching is an outlet for me because I love to tell stories, and it gives me a great platform to share stories and to have interactivity with the next generation. So, and by the way, you learn a ton as a CMO about what's happening in pop culture and what that generation thinks, feels, eats, sleeps. I learned more than any research could do by doing that. So I'm excited to do the next one, which will be actually next month.
Amazing. Well,
Yeah.
congratulations again for getting invited back. Honestly, that project that you're talking about reminds me of a few that I did throughout my
Really?
college and master's degree too, which is super cool. I felt like I always learned the most when doing stuff like that. Real world, hands-on
Absolutely.
experience.
Yeah, and it's great because you can give them I booked time with them during the week, and we would answer questions they had
Mhm.
and kind of hypotheses they had and really serious business questions. All this is under NDA, so they had access to just about everything. So it's a great way to give them a real world experience before actually being out in the real world.
Exactly. And I feel like the fact that they were able to sit down with you, at least when, guest lecturers like yourself did that throughout my programs, I always felt like, wow, like I'm getting, advice, they're answering the questions that I have and they're making the time for us, like usually that doesn't really happen at most universities. I know now it's,
I know
coming
it.
up, but
It's a shame too because I get out of it just as much as they get out of it.
yeah,
So as much as I do it because I love to do it, I also do it selfishly because I learn a lot.
everyone learns from each other, like no
Right?
matter what generation, age, whatever it
Absolutely.
is, like there's always something to learn.
I know. I've learned a lot from you just knowing in the short time I've known you, Karina. So it's so true.
Yes. And now, like being that you are around the next generation a lot, what is something that excites you about these up and coming leaders? And what is something that actually concerns you about this next gen?
I think this generation, we're talking about Gen Z, I'm assuming.
Yes.
I think they're incredibly socially conscious.
Okay.
I think they care about things more than any generation. They're aware. They want equality. They want to address issues that have gone on for decades unaddressed. I think that's wonderful. I think it's really, really great. And I think that's something that's uniquely special to that generation. And I think they should get a lot of props for that. What concerns me is, interestingly, mental health. I feel like, this is the generation that went through education through COVID.
Yes.
This is the generation that were born with a phone in their hand, practically, from a young age and on social media and with heads down. So I feel like that's going to be a challenge we'll need to address and really pay attention to. I have a lot of kids, and my wife and I collectively have 6 kids, all Gen
Big
Z.
family, big family.
So big family. But, we saw that during COVID and even before COVID, just with technology, just the challenge of that. So to me, it's just, there's so much access to bully and all these things that people can do that can really hurt and damage people. That concerns me. But as I mentioned earlier, I'm an optimist. I think there's always solutions for these things. So as much as there's a lot of negativity and mental health challenges, I think there's also more resources than ever.
Yes.
And I think there's a lot more growing awareness of the importance of mental health. So I'm optimistic. So that's why I like to get in front of young people as much as I can, as crazy as I am.
No, yeah, that's amazing though. I feel like you're so right. Like being someone that I am in Gen Z, I am classified in that, right?
Yeah.
Um, I would say like the whole phone thing, the cyberbullying, the bullying online, all of that is a huge thing that I'm seeing so far. But again, it all goes back to when having conversations with someone like yourself, like the whole like, okay, you can get an idea from somewhere else. You don't have to be on your phone so much. And it all goes back to the human connection at the end of the day.
It really does. And this reminds me, when we were prepping, Karina, we talked about the idea of, we talk about what's great about Gen Z and also the things that concern me personally. But I think the biggest challenge for the generation right now is just confidence. You read a lot of stories about, the Gen Z face in restaurants. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes.
Where they won't look at you,
Yes.
and they just like, what do you want? And so I think it's the biggest and greatest advice I can give anyone that's rising up, graduating or going into the field, is really have some confidence. And my favorite kind of artifacts when I leave a company or a brand is not the awards we've won or trophies and all those silly things. It's the cards, letters, texts, emails from people who worked for me who said, hey, I found my voice working for you.
Yeah.
I found my confidence. I had someone recently send me that, and it really moved me. It was like, I love the fact that they actually feel good enough that their ideas matter and that they can be heard and they're okay to say something out loud. I've had many people who didn't speak up and they're afraid, the younger people recently even. So I think that confidence, and when you can, and not, there's a difference between confidence and arrogance, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Confidence is looking people in the eye, speaking confidently, and being knowledgeable about what you're talking about. And even when you know it, just know that you know it and own it. So that's a big thing to me. And I think it's a big tip for people just to learn how to be confident.
Absolutely. And I feel like even in a position where maybe you might not know, like in that moment, you're not confident enough to really like own the conversation, let's say, like it's okay to speak up, be transparent about it.
Absolutely. No one knows everything.
No, it's impossible. We're all
Especially
human.
me.
We are all human. So I feel like, a lot
We're
of
all on this
people,
journey of learning together.
exactly. Like there's no need to put a lot of pressure on yourself. And I think that, another thing too for the leaders out there, it's like it's okay to be uncomfortable as well. Like
It's okay.
uncomfortable.
Awkwardness is okay.
Yes,
You can live with a little awkwardness here and there.
absolutely. I think it makes you grow. It's a part of the growth for sure.
Yeah.
For
I mean,
sure.
there is a little bit of science behind nervousness. It actually, if you can channel it correctly, it actually can make you a better speaker,
Yes.
a more confident lecturer, whatever it is you do. Having a little bit of that edge to keep you on your toes is really good.
That's awesome.
My daughter, I told her my youngest daughter, her name is Grace, super smart. I'm going to brag about her. She's at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and she's studying
Amazing.
digital marketing and international business.
Awesome.
And she always had fantastic grades. Her whole education, lower school, upper school, and in college in her junior year, but petrified of public speaking. So she had to actually audition at Tennessee for a special class to help her get over that fear. Literally, this is not just public speaking; it's like public speaking for people traumatized. So, but to her credit, she's learned now. She said it's the most horrible experience. She'd rather do trigonometry, anything but that public speaking class. And but she killed it in the end. I'm so proud of her.
That's amazing.
But I told her, like, all these grades are great and everything, but if you can't speak in front of someone or just in one-to-one, it's going to really cripple you. So, usually your kids don't listen to you until much, much later. But I was glad that she actually listened and took this course. So kudos to her for facing her fears.
Absolutely. Congratulations to her. I know that I was in those shoes literally just 2 years ago. So
Really?
I completely agree.
It can be intimidating, right?
It is very intimidating. I had to take this public speaking course and I was like, oh no, 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 that is not my thing. But now look at me. I'm on a podcast. Like,
you're amazing. You're amazing. Absolutely.
Definitely not was in my bingo
Joe
card.
Rogan, look out. Here comes Karina.
Yeah, I was just like, it was not in my bingo card, but hey, I mean, everything happens for a reason. And I'm
Right.
glad I stepped over that fear too.
I think it's fantastic. I love that.
Thank you. And one thing you did mention too is like I feel like you're constantly paying it forward at work, with the students that you teach. And I saw that you also volunteer at the Boys and Girls Club for quite some time. And paying it forward seems to kind of be in like your DNA, right?
It is, because people paid it forward to me when I started, and I made a vow that I would always keep that and remember that and do the same for other people. What I didn't count on, Karina, was LinkedIn and all these other things that came along where people have access to you so easily.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's hard for me. I literally feel guilty when I don't respond to like some young person messaging me on LinkedIn, or I speak somewhere and it takes me a little while. So I try and be on top of that quickly, but maybe that's just me being a people pleaser. So I'm trying to balance that. There's only so much I can do in a day, but it is important, and I think, I have seen people, on the flip side, not paying it forward.
Yeah.
Actually degrading people or hurting other people's career, or, just not good stuff. So to me, it just is a reminder. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to double down.
I think it's always good to put out that positivity, pay it forward no matter what, because you never know what impact you'll have on someone's life when doing the smallest things.
You never know.
And why is it so important for you to pay it forward?
Like I said, firstly was someone paid it forward for me when I started and gave me a break when I needed a break badly. But to me, I think it's also, having so many kids in my life, young adult kids, it's important for me to demonstrate that trait, to them and really model that behavior. And to me, them show, to me, ultimately it's about your character. All this stuff we do in marketing and advertising and brand, so important. We do great work. It helps companies grow. Families get more income so they can feed their family. That's all great. But at the very, very end of the day, like, it's your character. It's how you treat people. It's all those things about your character that really matter. And I feel like when you pay it forward, that's starting to really put into your bank of like, hey, it's not about getting points for something. It's about just doing what's right. And so to me, I feel like paying it forward is a great way to model to my own kids. Like, hey, I take this time out to not just do something just for me. My 3 kids, my own children, I used to have them volunteer every year with my church in the community. It's called Love Atlanta. And we would tackle the whole church. It's a huge church. Would tackle different projects, issues for a whole week. And it's year round they do volunteering, but it's just 1 week. It could be helping a food bank, reorganize all their inventory or whatever. So they actually used to love doing that. And I think it kind of stuck with them. So I could tell it's one of those things that really do stick, but you have to actually put yourself out there and do it yourself as a leader. And in my case, also as a parent.
Yeah, and I feel like when you do something like that, it's close to your heart and you're passionate about it, it doesn't necessarily feel like you're volunteering. You're more just
I know it all. It's
because you
just fun,
really love
you
it.
know.
Yeah,
I've had a blast doing some projects, so I think it's really fun.
that's amazing. I love that. Now, to wrap things up, I know we've had an amazing conversation, but the one question that I love to ask everyone at the end is always like, if you can go back in time and when you were first starting, what's one piece of advice that you can give yourself?
Take more calculated risk. I think taking big risk, not like reckless risk. I'm talking about calculated, like, okay, this is not certain, but I think this could be big. I need to pursue this. That kind of mentality. I mentioned earlier when we were talking about my education, and I went to St. John's College in Cambridge.
Yeah.
That changed my worldview and it opened my aperture a lot. And so I took a calculated risk when I got back to the U.S. Um, I talked with my grandfather's next door neighbor, who I didn't know happened to be the former CEO of BBDO in New York City.
Oh,
He
wow.
moved to Atlanta to really establish the office in Atlanta. And I talked to him. He was about to retire, and he's since passed. He was a wonderful man, very, very well known in the industry in his time. But he said, I asked him how to get into advertising. I kind of felt like that'd be a really cool field for me. And he said, well, you need to move to New York. And so I was like, wait, what? Can't I just start here? He's like, no. And at that time, that was really where the energy was,
Yeah.
Madison Avenue. And still to an extent it is today. But 2 weeks later, I took a one-way flight to New York City and moved. And I lived there for about 8 years. So
Wow.
that was a calculated risk. I didn't have a job. But I found one. So I think taking more and more of those calculated risks, I would go back to myself and say, hey, do it. Let's take that opportunity. There's power sometimes in just saying yes. It's important to say no to the right things and when you need to say no, but
Yeah,
tell yourself, you know what, I can do this. It's a yes.
absolutely. I feel like when you start pushing the boundary a little bit earlier on, it could pay dividends later in life.
I think everyone's capable of much more than they believe they're capable of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Kevin, for all the
Thanks,
insight and
Karina. This is
stuff.
really enjoyable conversation.
I
I'm glad
loved
we've
it.
gotten to meet and get to know each other. And thanks for having me on.
No, thank you. Thank you for being on here.